Hello, everyone. I thought I'd try to give you something other than that blank wall to look at while I read. Anyhow, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, the subscribe notification bell so that you know when I upload new videos, it would greatly help the channel. Let us begin. Chapter 5 The Great Escape. I had moved to Scottsdale, a suburb of Phoenix, in January of 1994, and by the summer of 1995, I was ready to be on my own. My father lived well, and for the first time, I was able to do things like go to the mall and actually shop. I was allowed to have friends and boyfriends over, and my dad was cool with everyone. I was free. There was no drama, except every once in a while I would get grounded for staying out past curfew. I didn't mind that because the punishment was deserved and it never lasted too long. Not to mention that was a lot better than being beaten. All of my friends came from wealthy households and were afforded the same privileges as me. We spent the scorching Arizona summers poolside at my house, barbecuing and listening to music. This was the life, and I was being spoiled. But the good times didn't last for long. My father married his live-in girlfriend, Michelle, not long after I moved in. Less than a year later, my little sister, I'm going to say, Caddy, was born. Soon after that, my father's only son, Kenneth Jr., moved in with us from Maryland. My father had 4 other children, including Tony and Jennifer, who had all previously lived in different states. My father's mother, Merrill, also lived at the house. It went from just me and my father to all these people who, while they were related to me, were nonetheless strangers. My dad became stressed, and my stepmother had problems adjusting to being a new mother. I spent most of my time taking care of the newest addition to our family while Michelle worked her way through her issues. She would stay locked in the bedroom a lot, and I remember my father not handling it very well. Soon there were screaming matches between Michelle and my father. His attitude began to change, and he started treating me differently. I no longer had the freedom to do the things I had only just begun to enjoy, and even the simplest things like getting my nails done had now become an issue. Not surprisingly, money had become tight for my father, who was now responsible for a house full of people. The majority of my allowance was cut off, and he was either unable or unwilling to do the things for me he had done when I'd first come to live with him. As my father and Michelle argued, my grandmother often got in the middle, frustrated with all the fighting. It became too much for me. Regardless of how well I'd been living, I was very fragile. Although I had become accustomed to the good life, I still carried traces of my old life with me. During the summer after my 11th grade year, I shoveled a few belongings into a hefty bag, pocketed the $36.57 I had been saving, called a cab, and snuck out my bedroom window. I threw the bag over the 6-foot-high concrete wall around our home and hoisted myself over it, being careful not to jump into the cacti that lined the other side of the wall. And just like that, I was gone again. The only plan I had was to get to a friend's apartment and to stay there for the night. I would figure out the rest in the morning. It was such a crazy time for me. I don't remember much about where I was or what I did as I moved from place to place with friends and even strangers. I do remember feeling the way I felt living with my mother in Tampa Bay. I would rather have been on the streets as a derelict than feel the way I was, and to feel like I was in the way. I had a boyfriend, Reggie, who was there for me. He had been on his own since he was 16, and his mother lived in New York, where he grew up. He and his mother had moved to Phoenix years before, but when she went back to New York, Reggie opted to stay. He was my high school love, we spent every weekend and holiday break together. He didn't attend school and was essentially a hustler who lived in a bad neighborhood. I loved the excitement of knowing that I was with a bad boy, and on many occasions would be thrilled and terrified at hearing the gunshots outside. Around the time I left home, Reggie's mom came to visit. I was instantly drawn to her. She was pretty and funny and treated both me and Reggie as if we were adults. I moved in with Reggie and his mother, and and her visit ended up being permanent. After hanging out with her for a while, she and I became friends. She said she knew a way I could make money to support myself now that I was a woman out on my own. I looked up to her and was happy to take her advice. It's funny how I had so much admiration for her as a girl at 16, but I can't remember her name now. Reggie's mom was a dancer at an all-nude exotic dance club. Without asking for any credentials, the manager allowed me to work there right away. The room was dark except for the stage and was packed with patrons, their faces masked by cigarette smoke. As my turn approached, I was nervous. My heart was beating so fast and so loud that I could not hear the music over its thumping. I tried to tune it out. I had to do it. I had to make it on my own. I went backstage to change into my outfit. It was a white bikini with a matching sheer long robe. The outfit came highly recommended from Reggie's mom, since white glowed in the dark under the club's black light. The song I had chosen for my very first dance was Come Down by Bush. The chorus blared from the speakers. I don't want to come back down from this cloud. It's taken all this time to find out what I need. I would dance to Come Down every night as my first dance. In the moments just before I made my debut, Yazette Santiago was my alter ego, was born. In order to get up on that stage every night and dance like I loved and meant it, I needed to put forth a persona of a fearless woman. So the scared little girl who felt unworthy, unattractive, and unwanted was gone. In her place was Yazette, a woman child who was everything Karrine wanted to be: beautiful, sexy, confident, and independent. When I took those couple of steps that led to the stage and the spotlight hit my body, the crowd began to cheer. It was all a blank. I performed without a thought, and movement came naturally to me. I got through it. I don't even know what I did or how I did it, but whatever I did was good enough for the crowd. They went wild. The next thing I remember is holding all my money and making my way off stage. Reggie's mother was there waiting with open arms. "You did so good, baby girl," she said. "You were beautiful out there, and they loved you. Now hurry up, count your money, and get back out there." And that's what I did, night after night. Every night I was pulling down $1,000 at the club. I was doing well, but my relationship with Reggie's mother turned sour. She was in her mid-30s at the time, and it seemed as if her heyday was over. Mine, at 17, was just beginning. When she found out I was making substantially more money than her, she didn't like it. She began to take advantage of me and started charging me ridiculous amounts of money, of rent, and would even demand that I buy her things. Our friendly friendship turned into a jealous competition, and I was soon on the road again. On December 26, 1995, I had been shopping at the mall, taking advantage of the post-Christmas sales and getting my nails done, when I received a call from an associate at another local strip club. an upscale place that most of the NFL and NBA players in Phoenix frequented. I had already dated one or two players from the Arizona Cardinals and was enjoying my run as one of the most popular dancers in the city. I was a center attraction, a main feature at the club. Your worth as a dancer is measured by how well you are able to hang upside down and spin from atop the 10-foot pole. It was equally important to know how to work the floor, gyrating and pulsating to the music in front of the customers who lined the stage. I was a champion in both areas. I racked up back-to-back table dances where I would cuddle and caress the upper bodies of the patrons. Some were strangers, but many were regulars. I had mastered a table dance trick, which was to turn the usual position into an unexpected handstand while wrapping my legs around the man's torso. It became my signature move. I was good at what I did, and I was paid accordingly. One customer who paid very well exchanged numbers with me and called me one day to meet him and a friend for a private dance session at his friend's house. This was something I did often, private dances for the Arizona Cardinal players and bachelor parties. They sent a chauffeur to fetch me from the mall. I walked up to the brand new 2-story home which stood directly in the center of a welcoming cul-de-sac. I rang the doorbell. I could feel in my stomach how nervous I was about who would be answering the door. I really wasn't in the mood, but there was a lot of money at stake, which was always my motivation. The door opened, and there stood Cool G Rap, an old school rapper. I didn't know who he was. I only knew his name because that's how he was introduced. I wasn't that into rap and had never heard any of his music, and his face was not that familiar. My first impression was that he was unattractive. I could barely stand to look at him, but he was charming and funny, and within no time made me feel very comfortable. I cannot recall a lot of what happened that night, but I do know I never did dance for him. There was something about Cool G Rap, or G, as I started calling him, that made me feel protected. It may have been his 285-pound frame or the reassuring bass in his voice. I'm not sure what it was or if it was anything at all, but I stayed the night. He was 27 at the time, and little did he know I was only 17. The very next morning, I was awakened by the sound of his booming voice, laced with his trademark lisp. "Hey, what's your name again?" he asked me. My eyes were barely open, and I could hardly remember who or where I was. I gave him the name I had been using as a dancer, Yzette Santiago, since I was 16. It seemed plausible because I had the state ID, the social security card, and the W-2s to prove it, and they all stated that I was 21 years old. Once I got myself together, I realized that G was on the phone with an airline booking tickets to New York for later that night for us. "You're staying with me," he said. "You're going to be my wife." Though our union would not be legal because I was a minor and not truthfully Yzette Santiago. From that day on, I was his wife in every way, but there was something else he wanted. He begged me, even ordered me to call him Daddy. I refused over and over again. I was strong then. I had been on my own for a while, making my own money. It was difficult for me to let anyone tell me what to do, and even more difficult for me to give someone a title of authority. But somehow, some way, I finally broke down and said it. It drove him wild. Once we hit New York, we found ourselves in his manager Chuck's Upper East Side Manhattan apartment making love. It was the dead of winter, and the room was ice cold. The sounds of the city swirled below. The blaring horns of taxicabs and the ear-piercing whistles of people trying to catch them. There was heavy snow on the ground, and I could hear the tires of cars below grinding into it. I missed the city, and there was nothing sweeter than having sex in it. Just as he was close to orgasm, yelled out, "Fuck me, daddy." And the look in his eyes told it all. He was hooked. 2 weeks later, we were back in Arizona. We lived in a posh new neighborhood in a 2,500 square foot, 4-bedroom house on about an acre of land. The first and second stories were connected by a grand spiraling staircase, and the house was blessed with night skylights throughout. Ooh, that's nice. It wasn't as large as the mansions I had become accustomed to while dating and sometimes living with the professional athletes, but it was beautiful. I was beginning to become used to my new home and all the rules that G insisted upon. He had a definite way of doing things, and most importantly, a definite way that he wanted me to do things. We bumped heads almost immediately. The first time G hit me, I should have left him. He had been on the phone with another woman. While he spoke on the headset downstairs, I was upstairs and unplugged the bass from the wall. I found his behavior disrespectful and had had enough. It wasn't the first time I had caught him talking to another woman. Sometimes he talked to them all day, and he didn't seem to care if I knew or not. He'd been on the phone for hours on end with woman after woman without saying a word to me. Yet I was expected to cook 4 times a day, clean the entire house, and do the laundry. On the day I disconnected his call, I heard his heavy footsteps storming up the staircase. I had a smirk on my face, expecting a bit of confrontation and a quick resolve. But that is not what he had in mind. As I sat on the edge of the bed, waiting for an argument, which I was sure I would win, he entered the room from the right, stood directly in front of me, and with his left hand slapped me off the bed and onto the floor. It hadn't been the first time I had been hit, from my mother to boyfriends in high school and even a recent boyfriend before I had met G. As a matter of fact, I had come to expect it. So there we were. I was the wife of a man who insisted I call him daddy, who chastised me as if he were my real daddy, who gave me the rules and boundaries I longed for and the order and responsibility I had been lacking, all the while ruling me with an iron fist, literally. From the first slap to the face, I was subservient, which was just the way he wanted me. I should have left. I should have grabbed my things and headed out the door. After all, I barely knew him and had been on my own before, but I was tired of running. I had nowhere else to go. My father had already told me that I could never come back to his house. That was the rule for all of his children. Once you're out, you may never come back, no matter what. I didn't want to be a stripper anymore. I had grown tired of the late nights and gawking men, and I had been desperate for a way out, and G gave me that way out. He gave me a home, and soon his family became my family. His sister and brother became my own, and I spoke to his mother, who I began to call Mom every day. I hadn't spoken to my own mother in years. I stayed with G for all the wrong reasons, and our relationship would go from bad to worse. G did, however, shower me with gifts, trips during the first few months of our relationship. I was only a teenager and hadn't learned a lot about the finer things in life. While I had been around some of the wealthiest men in the city, I was still very much a tomboy. Since high school, I had been dressing in oversized boy clothes and never left home wearing anything but sneakers and toting a backpack. I was not I was not as worldly as I would have liked to believe I was, and G was the first to open that door for me. He taught me about perfumes and purses, changing my habit of wearing his cologne to having the best of Chanel and Versace pure perfumes, and switching my dirty backpacks with the latest Dooney and Burke and Coach bags. He educated me on the cut, color, clarity of diamonds, and the most precious of stones. We ate well every day: lobster tails, shrimp, and the choicest cuts of beef and lamb. We drank Cristal champagne with our orange juice in the morning and all throughout the day. I was made to ditch my oversized jeans and tees for dresses and skirts and ensembles. G taught me a lot about being a woman, but he taught me to be unsure and abuse one. Oh, but he taught me to be an unsure and abused one too. Amid all the perks of being with one of the most, oh y'all, I'm talking my throat dry. Hold on. Renowned pioneers of rap were a number of disadvantages and dangers. I was not allowed to wear makeup and was not allowed to do anything too drastic to my hair. All of my dresses and skirts, though feminine, had to be loose-fitting and past my knee. I was also not allowed to talk to any of my friends on the phone, and if I did, he would become angry and even jealous because I was giving attention to someone other than him. The beatings continued and worsened as time went on. Once I prepared a lunch of shrimp and linguine and made a horrible mistake of leaving the tails on the shrimp. In my mind, that's the way they had always been served to me in the restaurants, and I saw no harm in offering the shrimp to him in this manner. Along with the knife to remove the tails, I served G his favorite dish and proudly retreated to the kitchen with a slight smile on my face. The rule was to always serve him first and then go back and serve myself. But as I loaded pasta onto my plate, G let out one of his many taunts to which I had become so accustomed. Yo, what the fuck is the matter with you? Who the fuck leaves tails on the fucking shrimp? He ordered me to cut the tails off the shrimp and remake his plate. Trembling and praying I would do it right this time, I scrapped the unused portion of his lunch back into the pot and began to remove the tails from the shrimp before reserving him onto a new plate. I was sure that I had gotten it right this time and would be spared his wrath. Again he yelled and called me stupid and worthless. I didn't understand. I had done what he asked. As I stood in the kitchen clutching my nervous stomach, he rose from his seat and walked toward me with his plate in his hand. He rested his plate next to me on the counter with his right hand, and just as soon as he did, he slapped me with his left. Stupid fucking bitch. What the fuck is wrong with you? He screamed over me as I picked myself off the floor. I still didn't understand, not even after he explained. When he received the first plate, for some reason, he hadn't seen the tails on the shrimp before he began eating them. Once he noticed the scalies crunching in his mouth, he spit the food back onto the plate. When I went to make him a fresh plate, I had scraped the food off from his plate on into the pot to keep it warm. While I picked all the shrimp out to remove the tails, I then reserved him the same linguine and the shrimp he spit out. Any simple mistake would set him off. Oh my God, it didn't take much. Damn. All right. And that is the end of chapter 5. Thank you all for listening. I will be back in the day after tomorrow. Yes, today is Tuesday. I will upload a new video on Thursday. Thank you all again. If you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that would be greatly appreciated.